The rough scrape of a reed is probably the most important step of the reed making process. And this is because it sets up your foundation. And I've gotten a lot of questions about how to do this right and how to do it better so we get the response initially that we need. All right, the blank should be soaked. It's been soaking about 3 minutes or so. I've already shaved the top part off. If you don't take the bark off in the beginning of the tip right there, then the reed will be, the slope won't be so gradual. It'll just be really thick all the way up. But notice how it's a nice thin slope up there. First things first, I'm going to just get the bark off and I'm going to work in the top and work my way backwards. Okay, I'm going to start on the left corner, right on the side where the bark is, the sides of the heart. And I'm going to work fairly quickly. I'm going to make sure to get rid of any cane that I feel like is catching, like this. Okay. And go to the other side. Leaving the middle alone. So you want to get the outside edges, and we're just creating a nice slope here. So working on the sides of the heart. This knife is very sharp, so it's kind of catching a little bit. And I switch to the other side. You'll notice I switch back and forth, front to back a lot. So I did this much. Okay, so I've switched to the other side. Working on the other side, the right corner of the heart. Just getting the bark off. And as I'm getting the bark off on the sides of the heart, I'm really making sure the underbark is gone too, that yellowish undertone once you get the outer layer off. Because if you leave that on, it's going to be too hard. And what I'm doing is I'm also working to create a nice slope as I go. So you can almost press on the edges right here and you feel a little flexion, a little give. And what that does is it makes sure the reed maintains that slope and the vibrations enter from the top to the back. Okay, so I flip to the other side once again. Get the bark off. You want to make sure you leave the sides of the bark right here in the back. And so just get that bark off. I usually leave the center for last, just because you want to maintain the integrity of the spine. This cane is really catching. Because my knife is so sharp. A little too sharp, but that's okay. It will wear out as we take this bark off. So let's wet it again. Just working here. Being mindful to get rid of those little places that caught. Ideally, you don't get all of those, but this piece of cane just is a little, it just wants to get them. Some cane's a little harder to work with. Generally, I like this cane. This is Grimaud. I've had it for a while. So. Okay, now I'm going back, getting that bark off. Good. I'm going to dip this in the water a couple more minutes. All right, here's where we're at right now. It's not perfect, but I'm getting the bark off. I need to go a little further back in the bark, right here in the back of the side. So, I just scrape a little more. Good. I like to leave the rails a little thicker on the side, and I like to leave a little bit. If I measure the bottom here, I mean, it's what, 5 millimeters right now of bark above the thread. So I like to start there. You can always bring it back more if the reed is super open. That's a good thing you can do, but really bringing it back closer to the thread at this point won't really do anything other than close the reed down. And if your reed is super open, maybe you want to do that. But this side's got a little more underbark on it, so let's clean that up. Okay. I can already tell this piece of cane is going to vibrate when I clip it open because the slope is so nice right here and the flexion. But I'm not clipping it open yet. I want to make sure I clean this up so that it doesn't have all these little grooves in it from before. And I want to make sure all that underbark is gone. Okay. And clean that side a little bit. We're looking good. You can see. You can see how it's sloped nicely, even if you look at it this way. I haven't defined my tip or anything. I'm literally just getting the bark off. If you clip the tip too soon, it's going to be too hard if it's not flexing. What I mean by flexing is if you gently press starting at the tip and the heart, you should feel it give. Just like when you play your reed, you want it to give a little bit in your mouth so you can manipulate it, right? That's how we do it. If it doesn't move at all, it's going to be a bored and super hard to play. So we'll come back in the top now that the bark is gone. And we're just going to clean it up. I work on the sides of the heart because I want to make sure that slope is very nice and that it's not super thin because I want it to flex. I want there to be flexion. And I want the vibrations as soon as I clip it open to just come into the reed. I want to invite them in. And the vibrations come from the tip and they enter in through the heart. That's where the bulk is. The back of the reed to me really just provides the structure. So I don't take a ton out of the back, and I will show you what I do. Still just cleaning up a little bit. I take on the side of the spine, about right there where I scored it, and I just gently score all the way down. And what that does is I say, okay, that is where my spine is. And then I take a little bit of cane off right above the bark on the right-hand side. And that's it. Then I do the same on the left. Get a little groove, and then work all the way back. Good. And so that's kind of defining where my back is going to be, where the top of it's going to be, like below the heart, and the whole back. And that will add the flexion I need, but also set up the structure for the reed. So, other side, I see a little bit of underbark, which I'm going to clean up. Okay, put it right there. And work in the back. Okay, sides of the spine, travel backwards. Other side, travel backwards. Notice these are itty bitty strokes, like I'm barely taking anything. If you look at the cane that I'm taking off, let's see if I can get it to focus. It's small. That's the precision work we're doing here. Okay, and then a little bit in the back, above the bark. Not a whole lot though. A lot of people call this area the windows, and there are different schools of thought on what to do there. Really, it's kind of personal preference and also just how you balance your reed. I don't think one is necessarily better than the other, but this is what works for me, so this is what I do. All right, I'm gonna wet it again. All right, so this is where we're at. I have not defined the tip. I removed the bark. See the other side? It's not perfect. It's okay. We really clean it up later. It's got a nice slope. You can see. Okay, from here, It should flex, so when you press on each side, oh, it flexes nicely. See if we can show that. Great. What that means is it's time to clip it open, and when we clip it open, it should already crow, and then we'll just refine it. So this is step one. Get your blank to flex. Get all the bark off and set up the structure. So when you look back here, this is the structure you're setting up. You're working right here in the back. The vibrations enter through the tip into the heart. So you're really scraping here first on the sides, and then get all the bark off, and then set where the sides of your spine are, and then the back of your heart. All right, let's clip it open. I clip about a millimeter. And the first thing I do is test the flexion. Let's see. It should move. The outsides should move in, and we'll get that flexion to be more. You can tell the tip is pretty thick, right? But when you press on it, it should give. It should not be a board. And it would make a peep now. I think it would be a bit of a hard peep, but let's see. All we do now is we do the same thing, the same order that we started on our initial rough scrape, but we start in the tip again, and then we work on the sides. We're gonna leave the back pretty much alone right now. When I tilt my plaque up, you can tell you can't see any shading. That's because the tip is very thick. So let's work on this. There we go. So I'm gonna start on the side. Scrape up. Always start on the corners of the tip, but I do go back a couple millimeters and then work my way up. The tippy tip is going to be the thinnest, but I want to avoid the center of the tip right there. So I angle my knife so that I'm working outwards. Okay. And then I work backwards. So I'm working closer to the heart now, just still on the sides. Notice how I have not traveled into the middle. It may look like it, but I'm using just the front tip of my knife here because I want to keep with the curvature of the cane. Okay, flip it over. Work on the right hand side. Okay. Right hand side. Good, and then go over to the left. Okay. I'm going to wet it a little bit. Just working on the left-hand side of the tip. Just allowing the knife to find the thick places, and then scrape up like you're scraping into a cloud almost. You don't want to push down. If you feel like you're having to push downwards into your reed, your knife is not sharp enough. Notice I'm just working on the sides, thinning the tip, and then ever so slightly working that slope as I go backwards closer to the sides of the heart. I have not defined my tip yet. I just know those are going to be the thinner places. So I'm allowing the vibrations to enter that way. Okay. Here's what we have right now. Notice we're really long because we've only clipped it a millimeter. But let's look at the... Okay, so we've got a nice slope. There's our opening. We're getting thinner. It's the other side. As I work, I want to make sure I maintain the closure. So when I press on the reed, outside corners close first and the center closes last. And that's just with a gentle press right here. If the middle closes first, then you have structurally something wrong and you'll have to problem solve that. Okay, let's give it a crow. Okay, so it vibrates pretty readily right now. It's pretty long, that's why. All we do is more of the same. Now, I'm not gonna clip it quite yet I'm going to continue to refine. Notice when I tilt up, it's still pretty thick. All right. So really, this is the second part of the initial scrape, and I do this all on the same day. I want to leave this reed where it's already crowing. It's going to be a rattly crow, that's okay, but I want to get it closer to finished length. I don't want to leave it this long, so I just keep working backwards. I want to keep that flexion, which is why I'm still working in this area, just working a little further back. Then I'm going to clip it. Because if the tip and the heart work together, that's when the reed is going to vibrate its best, and you will be much happier. So we're pretty thin there right now. I'm gonna crow it, should be crazy. Oh yeah, okay, it's time for a clip. We'll clip another millimeter here. Let's check our closure. You can almost hear the popping. Yeah, it's got nice closure. You can start to see the tip is getting thinner. Okay, at this point, we'll do the same thing, but we're gonna make it look more like a finished tip line here. So we always start on the sides, work on the sides of the tip. Notice I never just go with a flat stroke and scrape in the tip. I never ever do that because you will take away all of this structure right in the middle of the tip, and that needs to be thicker. Not super thick, but it needs to be thicker than the sides. It's where the warmth of the reed comes from. So if you take that out, your reed is probably going to be bright and shrill. It will make it vibrate. It'll be very shrill though, and I don't think you will like the sound, especially in like a C. Middle Cs, I feel like, are often determined by how much we take out of that area of the tip. Okay. Let's do it again. Should be wild and crazy. Clip. Okay. Let's measure where we're at. Okay, we're just under 72. The opening is starting to look really good. See? Looks good. Closure is nice. All right, so at this point, I want to put in a rough tip line. And I'll show you how I do that. Okay, first we'll look at where we are with our tip. The tip is still thick here because we clipped it, right? That's okay. We will refine it later. I like to put my tip line in at this point, so I'm more symmetrical about what I'm doing. It just helps me guide my knife. So I'm going to come right on the side here. I'm gonna make a little score, barely any movement at all. I don't know if you can see that. And then I will allow my knife to just catch in that score and lift up and gently take a little bit of cane out. So it leaves a little line. I'm barely taking any out in front of it. It's really just saying, oh, this is where I want the cane to go. Notice how we have a nice little side V there. Good, and then you'll go to the other side. Try to eyeball it the best you can. And here we go. It doesn't have to be perfect at this point, like I said. Just the best you can do. Then turn it around, and we'll do it to the other side. Again, we've still got refining to do in this, so, all right. I like the side of my tip line here to be 66 starting out. I actually think this is closer to 65 because I didn't measure, but I recommend you measure. 65 is fine though, 66 to 65. But I'm trying to keep all that beautiful slope that I built in the beginning right here. Okay. Let's see where I am. I just have a feeling I did it at 65. Oh, okay, just shy of 66. I wasn't quite all the way back there, which is good. So you see my V, my rough V here. You can also see it when I turn the reed this way. And you can see the beautiful slope. Okay, there we go. Yeah, okay. Let's wet it again. From here, we'll go back to the tippy tip. And we'll just clean it up, take a little bit more out. I don't take it all the way down because I like to let it rest. Because this is not going to be finished when we're done with it. This is just the initial scrape. So we're setting the foundations. If you take too much out in this step, you can't add cane in later. So the cane really, it needs to dry out. So I like to get it to where it flexes, to where it has nice slope, a nice opening, nice closure. Let's see. Yeah. Work on that closure a little bit more. There we go. And I want it to crow. It's usually going to be a little bit of a flat crow at first. I'm going to take just a little bit off, so I'm going to clip it. Maybe 0.5 millimeter. Okay, I am going to take a little bit more out because this, I feel like if I leave it this hard, will dry and it'll be a little hard when I come back to it. So I want to leave it vibrating more in the tip than I think it should. So it'll be a little rattly. That's where you want to leave it. And you can tell if you need to take more out of the tip by wetting your reed and tipping your plaque up. Notice how you can see a little shading on the left and the right side towards the top. But you don't see any shading right here on the sides, and we've been working on the sides. So I'm going to take a little more out right here on the sides of the tip, and then on this side, let's see, tilt your plaque up. Ooh, and on both sides, and that is going to give us the vibration we need before we let this reed rest. You have to have that nice shading. So I'm going to start on this side since it really has barely any shading at all. Make sure you do this with your reed nice and wet too. Okay. I'm going to work right here on the corner. Yeah. A little goes a long ways. Notice how I'm taking these itty bitty strokes. You want to be super pinpointed with what you're doing, which is why it's helpful to have a very sharp knife. Okay. Work on the left-hand side here. Okay, go to this side. I'm going to start on the left. Leaving the center alone. Again, a lot of this you'll hear me say the same thing over and over. Really, you work in the same order and then you just keep refining as the reed gets closer to finished length. Work on the sides. Notice how now though, I'm only working on the sides of the tip. I am no longer working in the sides of the heart. Once you get that flexion in the heart, you can really leave the heart alone because you want the heart to be a complex area. You want it to be a place that is thicker in the reed because that gives it a lot of the sound and your tone. If you take too much out, the reed could be flat, But again, being afraid to take cane out there, it might be too hard. So let the flexion of the reed with the peep, when you peep the reed, be your guide. The reed doesn't flex, it's not going to peep, it's going to be too hard. And this is the step, this initial rough scrape, where you set if your reed is going to be too hard or if it's going to peep. Okay, let's wet it. Okay, let's see where we're at. Okay, nice. You can even see here, I don't have it in front of the light. I'm getting used to this camera, guys. I'll get used to it. Nice, you can kind of see. I like to look at my reed from all angles. Gosh, that's a nice opening. And then here. Good. Okay. Let's give it a crow. All right, it's got a nice peep. It's a little low, but I'm not clipping it. I want to leave it here. I don't want to clip it all the way to finished lengths because this is going to dry. I want it to dry a little bit long. I feel like I'm at 71.5. And then when I come back to it, it won't be so open. If it's too open when you come back to it, it can be discouraging to work on because it's hard to get the reed to close back down. But if the reed ever is too open, a simple trick, if the reed is soaked, is you can take your fingers above the thread and gently squeeze. That'll close it down. And it will also raise the pitch up if it's flat. Okay, let's crow it one more time. Again, party favor, but I'm going to leave this reed right here. Next time we'll talk about how to finish and what the next step is to finishing the reed. And really for me, that's a two-step process. So stay tuned and let me know if you have any questions down below. Bye.